Welcome to BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we've got a special guest, Stamford head football coach, Britt Hart, will join the show.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who's done a great job. They're off to a 3-0 start. Stanford's been looked very impressive in year two under Coach Hart. Obviously had a little bit of a tough season last year, but is really making big strides with a still young team. So it's been fun to watch what they're doing there, and it's going to be fun to talk to Coach Hart about this group. I think that there's a lot going on in that program right now that's really exciting, and I'm going to be interested to see some of the things that he has to say about it.
Before we jump into this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stamford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And with that, we're going to take a look at some ball games that we had last week. We'll start with the locals, Dan. Cooper with a huge overtime win over San Angelo Central. That was really a classic ball game.
Yeah, it really was, and it was a big one for them because, I had a feature last week, and I talked to Coach Rohn a lot about kind of the process. This is a younger Cooper team, so it's kind of been a process of them learning to win. The first two games of the season were both losses where they were in the game in the fourth quarter, had chances to win, and couldn't finish. This was a different scenario. They won 41-38 in overtime, and it was a really good test for them because it was kind of setting up for an opportunity for things to go kind of either way. Again, they were up 15 points going into the fourth quarter, give up 15 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, including a blocked punt return for the tying touchdown with 1:40 left in the game. That ties the game, sends it to overtime. But instead of sulking, instead of kind of getting down themselves, they go and win the game in overtime with a huge catch by Malik Jackson on a pass from Chris Warren that sealed it. So I thought that was a really big deal for them to get in the win column and do it the way they did, because it really was a gut check for a young team. And to come through that way in a really thrilling game, I thought was a big deal for them. And I think that's going to be really pay dividends for them going forward. It's going to be fun to watch kind of where this team goes from here.
Is Cooper finding itself offensively now? They had more than 400 yards last week.
I think they are, and I think the big thing last week was that rushing total. They had over 250 rushing yards, which they had not been able to really get the ground game going before last week. And if that starts, all of a sudden you're talking about a completely different offense, because Chris Warren's a really good, experienced quarterback, but he's made a lot better when they can get that running game going and open some things up for him in the passing game. So I think that was a big deal for them, and we're kind of seeing obviously they've got some tough games coming up, so we will see kind of how that plays out. But I think this is a big deal for them.
All right, now you were on hand for Wylie's 33-28 loss to Lubbock Cooper, but that is an outstanding Lubbock Cooper team that Wylie was in contention with. So really all this loss tells us is that Wylie's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I think it also tells you just the fact that they were disappointed that they didn't win and felt like they really let it get away from them kind of tells you that too, because this is a really good Lubbock Cooper team, a really good Lubbock Cooper program, and Wylie felt at the end of the game, kind of like Brownwood did after their game against Wylie, that they really kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit, and if they had done a few things differently, that would have been a win instead of a close loss. So I think that the big thing for Wylie was that the offense just continued to roll. They had over 500 yards of offense. Here's the really impressive stat is they had 9 possessions in that game. They got at least 2 first downs on every one of those 9 possessions, pushed every one of those 9 possessions inside the Lubbock Cooper 35, which basically means you had 9 scoring chances in that game. They only came away with 4 touchdowns rather. They had a fumble at the 19 that was a turnover. They had a interception on the goal line basically, where those kind of thwarted a couple of scoring chances, and they had a couple others where they kind of stalled out a little bit. But the fact that their offense was able to move the ball as well as they did, I think tells you that this offense is very much legitimate. And I think the defense got a little bit worn down by the Lubbock Cooper running game in the second half. Lubbock Cooper did not throw a pass in the second half. They just turned straight to that running game and finished with over 300 yards rushing. So that's something obviously we'll have to work on. But when you're playing a team like Cooper, to have that opportunity in the first half to really take control and feel like you kind of let it get away from you, I think that's something that they can build on, and this game will definitely make them better.
All right, I was up in Breckenridge for the Big Country Preps game of the week. Cisco at Breckenridge. Breckenridge came away with a 30-27 win. It was 30-7 at one point. Going into the fourth quarter, it was 30-7, and Cisco rallied with 20 unanswered points in the fourth quarter and dang near pulled it off the comeback. But that was a great ball game. All right, now taking a look at this Breckenridge team that is now 3-0, this team's legit. They got the big bruising running back. They've got Jerry Lawson, who you have to load up to stop. Then they've got speed guys on the outside they can throw to. Adrian Ruiz is one. Bryson Herring is one. And so it's pick your poison. You're either going to let them eat up the clock and pound you all day, or they'll throw over the top of you. And Chase Lair, the quarterback, is really doing a fine job, and he's quick running the football as well. This is a very difficult team to stop. Now, if there was a concern in that ball game for Breck, it's, you know, once the momentum turns, how do you stop it? And they were forced to face that against Cisco, and putting an opponent away, because they had Cisco pretty much put away. And Cisco, as you know, is just one of these teams that's never going to lay down. They're never going to quit. And back day came. So really, I think it was a good experience for Breckenridge, being forced into this situation. I came away impressed with both clubs.
Yeah, and you and I kind of talked before we came on about that situation, and one thing I kind of mentioned is I think that it's important to realize, especially with a team that has not experienced that level of success in a long time, is that winning is a process. Learning how to do a lot of these things, we're closing out a good opponent. That's part of a process. So I think I agree with you. I think it's a huge deal for Breckenridge to be in that type of game and still be able to come out with a win. And I think it's really impressive what they've done to start the season. I think that when you look at back-to-back weeks to blow out Childress and to have Cisco down 30-7, tells you the type of ceiling that team has. And it's kind of been neat how it's all come together, because this was a program that in track last year, they finished as the region runner-up in track, had sent several kids to state. So you can kind of see the athletes coming through. And clearly, this football team is one you've got to take seriously. And we kind of talked about Cisco being one of those gold standard programs in our area. Anytime you're beating Cisco, I think it tells you, particularly when you have them down the way they did, it tells you the type of program, that the potential that this Breck program has this year.
And for Cisco to go into an undefeated 3A D1 house and almost win, is really indicative of how good they are as well.
Yeah.
This is a very good 2A D1 team that nearly knocked off Breck. Cisco is Cisco. They still, it's a limited number of people that get touches offensively. You're going to see a lot of quarterback keepers, and typically maybe one or two running backs getting the touches. They're limited in their passing game. They don't throw it around a lot. They did spread it around a little bit more than they had when they faced Breckenridge. They hit some targets that they hadn't hit before, but it's still, if you could call them predictable, okay, fine. But at the 2A level, they might be predictable, but so is a hurricane. What are you going to do about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about execution with Cisco, and they are what they are, and they still do what they've always done very well.
Yeah, and frankly, that's probably the biggest strength of a program like a Cisco or an Albany, is that you know what they're going to do, and you still can't do anything about it. You can't stop them. But I agree with you to have gone in back-to-back weeks to go and beat Wall, a good 3A D2 program that had played at the D1 level before this year. Said a lot about them, and then to come back the following week and make that type of comeback against what's clearly a very good Breck team, I think speaks very highly of the Cisco team and their potential and their capabilities at the 2A D1 level. So that's definitely going to be a fun team to follow as well.
All right, one game that I want to bring up from around the area is my kind of football game, my kind of game. Wall 3, Jim Ned nothing.
I saw that one. Yeah. I saw that one.
I
I was
would
like,
have.
that's
I
Evan's
tell you what,
3.
what a ball game. What a ball game. With 8:12 left to play, Pierce Jamison hits a 32-yard field goal to give Wall the win. Wall improves to 2-1. Jim Ned at 0-3, but they've had a hellacious schedule at this point, with really a shorthanded football team missing 10 guys at Wall, and still give them that kind of a ball game. Jim Ned is going to find itself once it starts healing up and gets everybody back. This is going to be a very dangerous team. I'm curious about Wall at this point. Maybe not quite as good offensively as we had anticipated, but every bit as good defensively, maybe even better than what we had thought.
Yeah, and this was a defense that brought back basically 10 guys that filled some sort of a starting role last year. So you knew they were going to be good, but they've been very, very good. And this was another example of that. But the Jim Ned one, I find that situation really interesting, because honestly, they're taking their lumps right now with a bunch of kids who weren't necessarily anticipated to be either starters or key players for them in those key roles. But I honestly think at some point, like you said, they're going to get their talent back, and it's going to make a difference at the the starting level, and it's going to make a difference on the win-loss column. But I think what's going to be really interesting is the impact that the experience all these guys who are kind of tapped to be backups are getting now. What the benefit will be? I think you're going to be a Jim Ned team with unbelievable depth at some point. Once they start getting some of their talent back, it's going to be a really interesting process. There's at some point it's going to click for Jim Ned, and everyone's going to look at that record and realize that's not the same team we're talking about.
Nope. No, they're going to be difficult to deal with once they heal up later in the year. It's going to be no fun to play them at all. Another game that I want to bring up Sweetwater 32 over Pecos 16. Sweetwater is going to be a little bit better than a lot of people anticipated. I think
Yeah.
they're beginning to show that this is a very young team, but they're clearly better than what a lot of people thought they would be.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and they're starting to really put some things together offensively in the passing game with a new quarterback, Chris Gomez, a young kid who really had a strong game last week. Completed 16 of 18 passes for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns to get that first win for them. So it's a lot of kids. I mean, this is a team that had very, very few starters. Like you're talking about, like one starter on both sides of the football. A very young, inexperienced team. So to be competing at the level as well as they are to start the season, I think is a good sign. And then going out and getting this first win was a big deal for them because I think probably in early in the season, you and I kind of thought it was likely they might be the odd man out in that district in terms of making the playoffs. But at this point, I think they're going to be in that mix there for that 4th spot, and I think it's that's a good sign for them.
All right, Brownwood improves to 2-1 with a 33-20 win at Burnett. This Brownwood team, based on their performance against Wylie, which is a ball game they could have won, they improved to 2-1. This is clearly a good Brownwood team. We're going to find out how good they are when they face Glen Rose this Friday at Gordon Wood Stadium. That's going to be a great matchup. 3-0 Glen Rose against Brownwood.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that Burnett game is they found themselves down 14-0 after a quarter and were able to go score 17 unanswered in the second quarter to take a lead into half, and then really kind of took control after that. But this is a team that's already in just 3 games in has faced a lot of adversity and has played really well in those situations. But I think that Wylie game we talked about at the time that we thought would make both teams better and that both teams would be good. I think that's exactly what's happened. These are two both good football teams that we kind of got to see early, and I think you're only going to see both grow. But this Brownwood offense is really coming along, and defensively the last 2 weeks they've really stood up tall as well. So I think this is going to be a fun team to follow all year long.
And on the subject of teams, we're talking about teams that maybe are a little bit better than some people thought they would be. Let's talk about the Clyde Bulldogs, who win going away over Merkel, and what one of the top performances of any player this week. Blake Carr, quarterback of Clyde, threw for 311 yards and 4 touchdowns, and rushed for 106 and a 5th score. So just a lights out performance for Carr as Clyde improves to 2-1.
Yeah, and I think one thing worth mentioning about that Clyde team is we looked at that 26-0 win over Eastland where they just completely shut down the Eastland offense and
Yes.
kind of thought maybe Eastland's offense was struggling. But you go look at the games against both Wall and Holly, Eastland kind of threw the ball all over the yard had some success in the passing game against both of those teams. So I think that's probably a good sign for Clyde and the Clyde defense that they were able to shut down Eastland to the degree that they did. But this Clyde team is clearly dramatically improved. And it's kind of interesting because like Stamford, that's still a young team. That's still a junior-led football team with a lot of sophomores in there as well. So that's one that's only going to get better under Coach Danny Dudgeon. So it's going to be fun to follow that program for sure. And while we're on the topic of teams that are clearly better than we thought they were, I'm going to mention one more and throw one out there. A score that kind of floored me, and that's the Hamlin Pied Pipers shutting out Crosbyton 33-0 to improve to 2-1. How about those Pipers?
The Hamlin Pied Pipers. I'll tell you what, they've got it going. That stunned me. It wouldn't have stunned me for them to win the ball game, but for them to absolutely dominate Crosbyton the way they did is clearly indicative that they've got some potential rolling there, and really maybe a shot at a playoff spot later on down the line if they can stay healthy. I know that depth is an issue at 2A/D2 for everybody, so there's a luck element involved there. But if Hamlin stays healthy, this is a team that we have to start keeping an eye on now.
And here's one thing to mention. Let's look at their upcoming schedule.
Throw another game out at you in a minute. Go ahead.
Before you do, one thing I think we need to mention: the next 3 games for Hamlin at Monday, Quanah at home, Abilene TLCA on the road. You're talking about 3 potentially winnable games. They've got a chance to build some momentum here, and they got a chance to build some confidence here. And here's the thing we've talked about for a long time is Chris Evans knows how to coach. This is a guy that has proved that in his past. This guy knows what he's doing.
He's
and I think you're starting to see a young team grow up, and it's been fun to see just how quickly that process has happened. This team is already exceeded expectations, in my opinion.
Well, since this is teams that are better than everybody thought night, apparently here on our podcast, let's throw out another one. Let's throw out the Kahoma Bulldogs, who dominated Kermit on the road 51-21 behind a big night from Boyd Cox, who threw 488 yards and 4 touchdowns. Kahoma is going to be there. They're going to be there at the end. fighting for a playoff spot, and a lot of us didn't see it that way.
No, and this is another team that's still very young. You mentioned Boyd Cogg's kid's a freshman. He's a freshman playing a lot of quarterback for what's turning out to be a really quality team. And they've got some really good young players, sophomores and juniors around those guys. Like Billy Bailey's just a junior, guy that's a really talented kid as well. And they've got several of those guys that are really leading that program. And I think the last 2 weeks particular beat a good Sonora team 31-27. Last week routing Kermit. And even in week one, Forsan turned out to be not that we were surprised by that, but Forsan is 3-0 and is a very quality team. And they had Forsan down 13-0 in the fourth quarter and had a chance to win that one. So Kahoma could very easily be 4-0 right now, or sorry, 3-0 right now. They're sitting at 2-1 instead. So this is definitely a team to watch, and it's one that I'm kicking myself. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in our prediction podcast that I really wanted to predict them to make the playoffs. I don't think I did. And I'm really kicking myself for that one now because I think this is definitely a playoff team right now.
They sure are looking like it right now at this point. Again, everybody has to stay healthy to get there. Things can change over the course of 5 or 6 weeks, big time at that level. But right now, absolutely, they do look like a potential playoff team, no question about it. With that, it's almost time to bring on Stamford head football coach Britt Hart. But before we do that, we need to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts throughout the school year. Also, for the love of the game broadcasting, our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Brecken, KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is for the love of the game broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give Rob a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to talk to. Call him at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And with that, Dan, it is just about time to bring on Coach Britt Hart of Stamford. The Bulldogs are off to a 3-0 start. This is a young team that suffered through a catastrophic season with, as far as injuries are concerned last year. They were not only young, but they were beat up and learning a new system. It was a tough go, but now they are more experienced. They are healthy. They've got their system down pat, and they're 3-0.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about covering the high school football in particular is getting to watch players and teams grow up as they age and get more mature. And this Stamford team, I think, is a great example of that. This is a team with a lot of freshmen playing probably in over their head a little bit last year as freshmen at the varsity level. It is a big jump, even at the 2A level. It's a big jump from 8th grade football to high school varsity football. And a lot of these kids made that jump last year, and now it's paying dividends because right now as sophomores, not only do they belong, there's a lot of these kids are standouts. So it's pretty exciting to think about the Stamford program and kind of the future ahead of it because there's a lot of young talent not that hadn't even made it to varsity yet. So you're going to see a kind of a youth movement through that program that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But that's one of the things I'm excited to talk to Coach Hart about, and it looks like he is about ready to join us. So let's go ahead and get him on.
And joining us now via Zoom, Stamford head football coach Britt Hart. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate y'all having me.
Coach, right off the bat, a 3-0 start. You have to be ecstatic. Tell us, what are the keys thus far to this early success?
Lots of excitement going 3-0 right now. We've had a lot of hard work ever since December of last year, and going into 7-on-7, we were very successful at 7-on-7, very successful in our O-line challenge, and we've just kind of built on that during the summer workouts going into the season. We're still young. We just have a lot of young kids with big sophomore class that is actually stepping up quite a bit this year. And we've got some real good senior leadership. So it's just been very positive.
And you mentioned the excitement. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement around town. As a coach, just kind of how do you balance maybe, the guys gaining confidence from the success, but not gaining too much confidence and maybe not reading too much into some of the things that are happening?
Well, with everything that kind of went on last year with all the injuries we had, anything that we have done so far has just been really, really positive. I speak humble pie, and we don't get too confident in what we do each and every week. We just kind of concentrate on us and just make sure that we're doing things right and kind of let the game take care of itself.
Coach, let's go back to last year with the injury problems that you had and a lot of young kids out there on the field. It's paying dividends now, though, isn't it? Really, because a lot of people that didn't get a lot or didn't have much experience got it and got it early.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't um, expect all that experience, especially from a freshman class last year. And we ended up starting 6 freshmen because of all the injuries. Very tough for freshmen to kind of come in and take that role on a varsity playing field on a Friday night. They embraced it. They went through their bumps and bruises, but they've really, really gained a lot of confidence going into this year, and just hope that we stay healthy and continue that success.
And Coach, at Stanford, you kind of entered kind of a unique situation in that they'd experienced a couple of down years by their standards, but they'd experienced just a ton of really high level success in the recent past. So expectations were high and those sorts of things. Just kind of talk a little bit about stepping in that situation where you know it's a young group, you know you're going to have some growing pains, but you also can kind of see on the horizon some of the talent coming through as well. What's that like as a coach?
Well, I'm used to expectations. Being in Wellington and being in Fall City, the expectations are extremely high. I knew what I was getting into when we come to Stanford. Stanford's been really great to my family. And the expectations is to win and to be successful. And we took our bumps and bruises last year, but I think that this team this year has embraced those expectations. Winning is winning, and if you can kind of mentor that success going into summer workouts and 7-on-7 and O-line challenges and things of that nature. They kind of carry that over into the season. Now, I will say this, the senior class that I have this year has embraced a leadership role that I really didn't think that they would. They have kind of come out of their shell a little bit and just really, it's kind of more of like a family type atmosphere going into the season. And they embrace that big sophomore class helping us. And we've had some guys that are step up in that junior class as well and just embrace their role on the team. And it's just kind of come together right now. And we still have a long way to go and we're still making young mistakes, but hopefully that those take care of itself week in and week out.
Coach, tell us a little bit more about this offense of yours. I find it to be a unique offense. I've seen wing T looks. I've seen you can show spread looks. You run tempo. You've slowed things down. I would think it's a pain in the neck to prepare for. What can you tell us about how it originated and your coaching tree and how you put it together?
Well, I come from the Wade Williams coaching tree up in the Panhandle. We were at Hico together for years, and when we went to Wellington, his son Weston Williams, probably one of the best athletes that I've ever coached. He was a kind of a spread type quarterback, and we were always, gung ho, double tight, wing T, bootlegs, buck sweep, trap, waggles, and things of that nature. And when we kind of got into this, when we got Weston and we started kind of getting into the spread type offense, I spent a summer with Weldon Nelms. And Weldon Nelms is one of the winningest coaches in the state of Texas. He's retired now. I still stay in touch with him. He's a real good friend of mine. But when he was at Wimberley and he won those state championships, he was kind of coming up with what he called the hybrid wing T, which was the spread wing T with wing T principles. So just spending that summer with him and just kind of learning from him and kind of taking what he had and incorporating with our terminology has just paid dividends. And we had some really good athletes in Wellington, had a lot of success and, getting to the semifinals numerous years and then winning a state championship in 13. It just puts out year in, year out what fits our kids. Each year is going to be different. So if we have some kids that we can't spread the field out as much, we're able to get into the tight formations with big linemen and run the ball and kind of bootleg off that. And then, of course, now we have some skill players that we're able to spread the field out a little bit more and still use those wing T type principles. And we do want to go tempo. We'd like to run. We want to speed the game up and go multiple formations because it does. I do believe that it gets the defense in a bind, having to prepare for all those formations. So we try to make it simple, but at the same time, we want to do what's best for our kids.
You're in your second year now, but when you introduced it, I mean, how how difficult is it for the kids to quickly absorb in your first year in a system?
The first year was very difficult here. They were all spread, Tony Franklin system. It's pretty different from the system that I've ran for the past, I guess, 17 years now. I've had to adjust some things and make it a little bit more simple for these kids to understand. I think that 7-on-7 has really, really helped us out and playing year in and year, both these past few summers and learning the offense. But yeah, it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment for the linemen more than anything, just because of the fact that terminology wise, it's pretty verbal. And those guys, had to put that hand down in the dirt and learn how to pull and kick out and run some counters and run some traps and some folds and, just old school wing tee principles, but they've embraced it and they've gotten a lot better. So I'm pretty pleased the way things have happened.
And Coach, you mentioned the youth in your program. I mean, you do have a lot of sophomores playing key roles for you that got experience last year as freshmen. Just what has it been like as a coach again to watch that maturation process, and how much fun is it to kind of see these guys continue to grow into these leadership roles at such a young age?
Oh, it's been awesome to watch. Guys like Caston Vega that actually played a big role as a freshman at running back last year. He's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger this year, and very hard worker. So he's just going to get better and better. And then I kind of go into my quarterback situation where I had a JV quarterback, win the starting job this coming year, and Christian Duran, and he's 5'8", but he plays like he's 6'8". So it's just very fun to watch and how they develop. They're studiers of the game. They watch a lot of film. If they have questions, they do come into our coach's office and ask numerous questions, but they all do. And then we've got some really good linemen in that class as well. Diego Cantu, Jesse Rodriguez, Aiden Martinez. Those three guys, very, very strong in the weight room, and they start both ways. So, when you got, 7, 8 sophomores that are starting on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, it's really exciting, but we still are young and we're still going to go through some growing pains. I understand that. We're just trying to embrace these wins right now and have some momentum moving forward, because, we've got a hard schedule coming up in the next few weeks, and it's going to be pivotal that these guys grow up a little bit.
And you kind of mentioned when we talked before the season about some of the success that was happening at the sub-varsity level, at the junior high level. So it looks like you've got a really nice pipeline of talent, either on the way or already here in some cases. Just I guess kind of talk about the state of the program. I know you're trying to build a program here. Just what's kind of the state of the talent level coming up?
Well, it's been really good since I've been here. I tried to keep as many of the younger classmen down as I could. That's why I always say about the sophomore class is that when I brought up 6 or 7 freshmen last year, we were still able to win district on our JV and go 9-1. And then my 8th grade class, which is now freshmen, they lost. They didn't lose a game through junior high. So just very successful kids that work extremely hard. Just hope that they stay into it, they stay healthy, stay the course. And, hopefully we're building something special in the future.
All right, Coach, tell us about this district that you're in. Everybody knows about Holly. Everybody knows about Cisco, but there's another team that's really on the radar screen. Other than you guys are 3-0 and really improved, but this team from Olney is starting to look like a big concern for everybody.
Oh, no. And Coach Guy, he does a great job over there. He was actually at Shamrock when I was at Wellington, so I know him. We know each other real well. They run, the flex bone. So, they're going to be very big on ball control. They're very tough up front. They've got some good running backs. His son is the quarterback. But this district, man, it is tough. I mean, Holly Holly and Cisco are also always going to be the front runners. They're both in the top 10 in the state of Texas. And we're just hoping that we can just kind of compete and maybe keep it close and have a chance maybe at the end, but extremely hard, tough district. Lots of really good athletes, lots of really good coaching. It's going to be a difficult road. Just hope that, we can find ourselves in the game in the fourth quarter with all these teams, but it's brutal. It's brutal.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. Best of luck to you. We'll be keeping a close eye on you, and I'm sure we will run across you again down the road this season.
Yes, sir, Evan. I appreciate y'all having me.
And that was Stamford head football coach Britt Hart. And for anybody that's taken one look at that team this year, it's clear that they have taken a step forward. And this is still a young team.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing I thought in talking with them was that you can see the excitement around this team, around its potential, because it is still very young. But you also can kind of see that they've got some real tests coming forward, particularly in that district where you've got real veteran Holly teams and Cisco teams that are, kind of state hopefuls. So it's kind of a balance there, and this program is still on the rise. It's still building, and it's kind of fun to watch that process. But you do know that there are some challenges coming. It's going to be kind of interesting to see where this Stamford program stands alongside some of those, because that's kind of where they're trying to get. So that's going to be a kind of a fun measuring stick for that program.
The whole mentality is changing around there. The heads are up. The body language is different there. It's still a young team, but it's a confident team. This is a team that believes in itself.
And that's one of the kind of the neat things is these young guys are not only leaders on the field, they're kind of becoming leaders of these programs. Like I saw a couple of those during baseball season last year, for instance, there were a couple of freshmen playing really key roles for that team that you could tell were kind of, well-respected leaders on that team. Same is true of this football team with those now those guys are sophomores. So these guys it's a really mature group for how young they are. And those kids are only going to get better. So it's a really exciting time for Stanford. It's going to be fun to follow.
All right. And with that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday Night Podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you, we've got 3 separate subscription packages here at Big Country Preps. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage.
We'd also like to remind you that if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. We have digital downloads available for $7, as well as some keepsakes and prints. So make sure you check those out. As you're scrolling through the site, you'll notice pretty quickly that we take a lot of photos from these events that we're at. It's something that we enjoy doing and something we are very proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.